Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back to the Higher Grounds podcast and not the Morning Minute Meditation. We're glad to be here today. Well, Brother Michael, how you
Yes,
doing?
sir. Doing good.
Good to see you.
Excited about being back in the Higher Ground podcast studio.
We're going to do some renovations to our studio in the next few months and get some things squared away. Got a table that's going to be built for us, a new studio table. And
How about that?
And looking forward to it. Just going to try to bring our own coffee bar in here and
How about that?
get us rolling and strolling. What's going on, Matthew?
It's going pretty good.
You holding her down up there in the concordy?
I'm trying my best. My very best.
Very best.
Very best.
So you're giving it all you got, and then some.
110%.
110.
Yeah.
I never have understood that. I'm giving it 110%. I never have understood
I didn't
that.
understand it either, but it sure sounded pretty good.
It sounded really good. Yeah. It's unbelievable, America.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving more than is available.
Yes, that's right.
How about that?
So how's things over to Seagrove, over to the Lighthouse Baptist Church?
Good. They're still putting up with me. And
Are they?
They let me preach there. Yeah, they love me. It's a act of charity. I appreciate it very much.
Well, considering you started the joint.
Doesn't mean don't take anything for granted, though. You know
That's true.
you don't want to show up. You don't want to show up one day and your walking papers be taped to the door. So,
Yeah, it could happen.
But nah, yeah,
I had a preacher friend of ours in the area. He got up on Sunday morning. He preached. You know, he's a wild man. He preached to his congregation. Went home and ate lunch, and he always went back on Sunday afternoon to study. You know, before he Sunday night service, and he got back. He put his key in the door, and it wouldn't fit in the lock. And they had literally they had changed the locks. From morning service through lunch, and
they didn't even come back at night.
They didn't come back, and they didn't even have the wherewithal. I guess they had the wherewithal, but they didn't have the guts to look at the man and say, "We just don't want you no more."
Yeah, man.
So we're just changing the locks.
That's one of them. You may wake up in the middle of the night in cold sweats, with the dream like that. You know what I'm saying? So but so far, I mean, I still got a key to the place that I know of.
Yeah,
and so
you know who that was, don't you, Matt? No, it was Brother Doug.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Wow.
Yeah, when he was over at White Plains, if I remember right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, many years ago.
Wow.
Many years ago.
Yep.
Living faith got started.
Yeah, I think he came out of there and started living faith from there. Sure did. Absolutely. Well, we want to talk today about a subject that we know that you're involved in. You are involved in this because if you're not, you wouldn't be watching us.
That's right. That's right.
So today we want to talk about something I know very little about coming from my era of time. I probably know more than I should, but we want to talk today and let these guys who know more about it than I do kind of take the lead. We want to talk about social media itself. Now, we're coming to you on various medias. If you're a YouTuber, you can find our stuff on YouTube, which is in the strictest sense a social media in and of itself, because you have the ability to interact and make comments and so on and so forth. Then, of course, we come to you by Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and, utwitface.com. I don't know what we're coming to you on, but we're coming to you on a lot of different medias. Yeah. And so we want to talk about that just a little bit. One of the reasons why is I know of people, and so do you, if you have been involved in media, that have had some very difficult things that have happened in their life, regrettable things, and social media was the bar by which that regrettable event happened in their life. And so we want to talk about that just a minute. Matt, I know that you have studied social media, you've preached on it, taught on it, and I know that you have garnered a lot of information about it. And so won't you take the mic and just kind of give us some things in your research that you have pulled out that might be interesting to the listening audience?
Yeah, so I got it this morning. So all this is stuff that I found this morning from some stats and statistics. Social networking, they say, is still growing and has not reached its full potential. And they say a population that we're in now is roughly 7.5 billion people. Out of those 7.5 billion people, 3.6 billion people of the population is on a social media platform.
How much?
3.6 billion people.
So about what, half?
45%.
Close to that. 45% of the population
is on social media platforms.
I wonder what what the percentage of the population is that's adolescent. I wonder what that would be. It's bound to be.
They said millennials are 90.4% of that population that's on social media. They say that the Generation X is 77.5%, and baby boomers are 48.2% on that platform today.
Wow!
And so they say that they're projecting by 2025 there'll be 4.41 billion people on social media, and so they're expecting it to go from 3.6 to 4.41 billion by the year 2025.
So within 4 years.
Yes, sir, within 4 years. And
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, they're saying now all this is online. You can look up the day for the stats and statistics. And they say the reason why it's so booming in our days because everybody's got cell phones, and most of 97% of social media is their data is took off of cell phones. Facebook has 2.7 billion followers. Instagram has 1 billion followers. Twitter, 33 million. Snapchat, 249 million, and TikTok right now has 80 million people. And so all these social media platforms are just flourishing.
Now, I'm an old man. I'm like 50, close to 55 years of age, my birthday. So what is TikTok? I don't know anything about that.
I don't know. I've seen certain videos of TikTok on social media.
What is it, Matt? Mike,
yeah. You are 55. You forget my name. I think he's right. I think it's just like, you do videos. And
it's got music in the background.
You post them. Yeah, and it doesn't have to have music. It can, but it's just you're watching videos. And you can do about anything you want to, and you post it, your followers see it. They can do like they can on every other platform. They can like it, share it, all that other stuff, And people build follow. There's actually, believe it or not, there's people make a ton of money because of their followings on social media. I mean, it has become it's a revenue beast.
Yes, sir.
Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of it because it doesn't affect me at all. I don't make anything on my stuff. But anyway, like especially on YouTube, you get a certain amount of subscribers. There are people knocking down money that would blow your mind. Yes. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's no different. Let's just say that, Matt got us on local TV around here, right?
Right.
But our audience is real small.
Right.
Okay. Now, it's all about your reach.
Right.
And if they see, okay, this guy here's got 200 million followers, maybe he's a social celebrity. Well, then if people are looking at his stuff every day, why don't I advertise my products there?
Right.
Know what I'm saying? According to the demographics. And so it's a beast. It is a beast.
Wow.
Yeah, in that genre.
Harvard University done a study that I read this morning. They said that social media is addictive both physically and psychologically. You're talking about the likes and the shares. They say that people every 10 to 15 minutes are checking their social media platforms for likes and followers. And they say that the reason why that is because social networking lights up the same part of the brain that also is ignited when you take an addictive substance.
So it's your brain's releasing endorphins when you're on there.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And that's why you look at likes and shares and it lights up that part of the brain that has you to check it every 10, 15, 20 minutes to see if I got any new friends, new followers, anybody shared my video, is anybody liking my video. I'm checking the comments, see what people are thinking, what people are saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know that for me, I fought against social media for a long time as far as me becoming involved. In 2015 is when I first became involved with Twitter, and that was because of the We Stand With God rallies and our political involvement. And one of the things that I did to garner people coming by and looking at what we were doing with We Stand With God rallies was to post quotes from our founding fathers and quotes from older preachers. Well, that took off. And when it took off, I just continued to do that, And then when we took on the Higher Grounds Facebook page, I continued to do that. And then with a personal Facebook page, that's one of the ways that people know the body of work that we do on social media is through our quotations that we put out. And then, of course, the Morning Minute Meditations came along after the fact, and, of course, the episodes. But it's amazed me how many thousands of people, follow through various medias the body of work that I do and that we do. It's astounded me.
I'll say this. I mean, I had a similar initial reaction to social media. about just
fighting against it.
Yeah, a little bit standoffish in the beginning, didn't know really what to think of it. That's a common response. That was the way it was with television years ago, different things like that. It always has been the initial response sometimes by people in the community of faith. I will say this about it, though. One thing that I finally just came to the conclusion of is it's here to stay.
Yes, sir.
It's not going anywhere for a long, long time. This is going to be a generational thing at least, and so since it's not going anywhere, I think you got to circle back around and say, okay, if it's here to stay, doesn't matter how much I fight it, I'm not going to change it. So therefore, is there anything positive I can do with it? You know what I'm saying?
Kind of like sin.
Okay, yeah. And on to the next stage. But it's like this, back, I guess, I don't know, maybe 60 or so years ago, if you didn't have a church sign, nobody knew you were there, right? It's almost getting to the place now, like if you don't have a web page, because when people move to your community, they're not riding down the roads looking for a church, they're going to Google.
Yes, sir.
So if you don't have a website, you probably don't, it's like you're not there. But it's even starting to layer out to the place where if they can't find you on social media,
right.
It's almost like
they're
you're
not even
there.
looking, they're not even visiting the website. So.
No, exactly, yeah. I mean, they're not near as much.
Right.
And so, and not only that, but it really has a lot of potential as far as people finding you organically. Now they can hear your preaching, they can listen to the singing of your church. There's a lot of positivity that can come out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's what I'm seeing now. Such as, okay, for example, let me give you an example of this. So right now we had a family that was relocating from Colorado to North Carolina. Okay. And they knew about the general area they wanted to settle in, which was, between us and Greensboro. When I say us, I'm talking about Asheboro, Greensboro area, somewhere in that general vicinity. So they started looking for churches around. They found our church, listened to us online for 6 months, before he ever started putting his resumes and stuff in. So put a resume in and come into town for an interview, come by the services, stayed for the day, met people, and kind of confirmed, Then his wife flew in and come to the church, during the process. She has family in Virginia, which was one of the reasons they were relocating back to the East Coast. Long story short, they learned everything they needed to know about preaching, belief, to say when we land on the ground, that's where we want to go. And it has matured into, we've got a precious brand new family in our church, all because of the ability to really listen to everything that was preached for months on end.
Right. Right. I can see that.
Yeah, and so that's been very valuable, in that regard right there. And not only that, but I mean, now instead of just the 150 or so in the sanctuary that hear the message, if your message goes to, say, social media, say Facebook, you may double, triple. Some churches get an outstanding amount of local reach.
Right.
And so that's positive. You can. There's ways to advertise to specific an area.
Yes.
Demographic. There's just a ton of stuff you can do with it, and so those are very positive things for a church. Gotcha. I think it complements your other ministries. If you got bus ministry and door-to-door visitation, whatever the case may be, and if people are going to carry this around all the time, and you can fly up in their feed in some way, shape, or form. If they're remotely interested, searching for the Lord, whatever the case may be, they may give you a click.
Right.
And then you may, from devotions to preaching to whatever the case may be, there's just a lot of ways to get in front of people. And that's what we are about. We're about reaching people. So that's another tool. Right. And that's where the positivity comes. If you look at it like it's a tool, it can have some positive, some positive, I guess you could say, what would results.
This goes without saying there are negative aspects to it. Mm-hmm. What have you seen negatively in regard to it? Matt was talking about the amount of time.
Yeah.
I think it's a time waster, a time stealer. One of the things that I've seen about it too is that, and I post stuff, and that's about all I do. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't go tooling around to see who's doing what. And if I find out anything from someone, they say this is going on social media, I have no idea. They're going to have to send me, some kind of a forward,
something, yes,
because I don't know. I don't have time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, with that being said, though, there's a lot of people who that's all they do. I mean, I say all they do. They spend a ton of time looking through materials.
Yeah. One of the goals I would say of this podcast would be to bring awareness to everybody who does use social media, including the three of us here,
Yes.
you know, that based upon science and what they're saying, that how addictive it can be, anything that causes your mind to have a reaction can be something that can begin to consume you. So here's a handful of things that are pitfalls, I guess you could say, of social media. Okay. You mentioned the first one, time waster. You've only got so much time in the day, you know, and over in the book of Proverbs, the writer in chapter number 24 talks about going by the field of the slothful, seeing it grown over with thorns and nettles and things of that nature. And so in that regard, he talks about the fact that poverty can come upon one that travaileth as an armed man there in Proverbs 24:34. And so what can happen is you can get so wrapped up in this that you can neglect this. You can start neglecting the people you love. You know, you can miss out on spending some time doing some things that will make memories with your family if you spend too much time with your face buried in your social media. So that it can be a time waster. I'll say this too, another one. I got about 4 or 5 I want to throw at our podcast family today. It can promote being a busybody.
Well, that was what I was fixing to bring up.
Yeah,
the Apostle Peter, gave a real grave warning about that.
He did. Over in 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 14 and 15, he says this: "If you be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are you, for the Spirit of glory and of God resteth upon you. On their part he's evil spoken of, on your part he's glorified." But in the very next verse he says this: "But let none of you suffer as a murderer, a thief, an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters." And there are things that people see on social media sometimes, and they involve themselves in situations that really didn't involve you.
Right.
And you become a busybody. There are some people who create profiles, they never post anything, but the reason they need that profile so they go snoop on everybody else's business. Yes. It's like a peeping Tom looking in your bathroom window. It's weird. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so they snoop all around everybody's business, and then they do all the rest of their communicating about it off the cuff. It doesn't matter, you're a busybody either way.
Right.
You know, the way you probably talked about it earlier probably would be the best philosophy to have. Say what you got to say, you know, put something that'll store up for you later, you know, and then get out. You know what I'm saying?
Are you talking like the anon accounts, that type of thing? Or
well, no, not necessarily. No, I'm talking about, because on the Facebook side of things, it'll literally be a legitimate account. It'll be the person's picture, and they say they don't ever post anything because it's not what they created it for. They created it just to look at everybody else's stuff.
I get you.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, I'm not involved, but I am very involved kind of deal. And so there's that whole thing about being a busybody. I'll say this: it can be death to your testimony. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 13 that we were to be salt and light, right?
Yeah.
But what you're finding now very commonly among Christian church-going people is they'll post the ungodly books they're reading sometimes. They'll post the secular music they're listening to. They'll flaunt their lifestyle out there. And it's almost like in Jeremiah's day, there's no shame or not even any blushing anymore. And it becomes an emboldened way to, you know, kind of hang your dirty laundry out on the line shamelessly. And there's no telling how many people that it don't even matter if they're listening to the preaching from your church's page. If they turn around and see you living dirty as a dog, they're going to be like, "Nah, I already got that." You know, why go to church if that's all the only difference between you and I?
Well, the truth is that's one of the reasons why this venue called the High Grounds Podcast exists, is because I primarily saw people who were putting things out there that was either subpar or their attitude stank. I might have agreed with their premise, but their attitude was not Christ-like. It wasn't godly. And they were scorners. Yeah. And if there's one thing I can't stand is a scorner. And then, or they had good material that, you couldn't argue with, but their lifestyle did not live up to the religious persona they were trying to project. Yeah. And so I saw that, and I really got angry about it. And it was like God said, we'll do something about it. And that's why we have the venue that we have here. Not that we're perfect people, but our intent is to project a godliness and a holiness that's biblical.
As a pastor, you got to be real careful on social media, because you'll see enough stuff from people that attend your church on social media that if you ain't careful, you'll go in and that's all you'll preach on all the time, what you see on social media from the people you pastor. Right. And so it can be a trap or draw. Let me tell you another one. This is a big deal. Right now, I just recently read a book written by a divorce attorney, and he said over 50% of all his divorce cases he's seeing now, and this is written in the last couple of years, over 50% of them, there is a connection with social media. Yes. And here's what's happening. People are... Reconnecting, that's right. They get out of school, then the next thing you know, there's an old high school flame or somebody they were, dated in college, whatever, and they're 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever years in their marriage, and there's a reconnection on social media, all the nostalgia that's involved with that. They start friending each other, liking each other's stuff. Next thing you know, something's happened, and a marriage is ruined.
Yes. Well, a preacher friend of ours from South Georgia had a local attorney that he was friends with, and he primarily litigated in divorce cases. And he said, I asked him if social media, and this was probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
He asked if social media was a mitigating factor in a lot of the divorces that he handled, and he said 90%.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he said.
Very high. Yeah. Here's another, just something to consider, okay? And this is the same with texting or anything else. When you say something, okay, let's just say Matt, he's a pretty popular guy. He's on social media. He's got 1,000 friends. Okay. He's mad at one person, and so he vents on social media. Well, the bad thing is that the 999 other friends that he wasn't aiming at don't know he wasn't aiming at them. And so when he makes a smart remark like, sometimes your friends aren't worth having or whatever, they don't ever check on you and care on you. Well, them 987 of them 1,000 are like, well, I ain't checked on him I ain't talked to him in 2 months, 3 months. Is he talking to me? You can do tons of damage being flippant with your statements and everything else. Next thing you know, man, you've isolated half the people that you really care about or whatever. Right. Because you just a poor choice of words. Grievous words still do stir up anger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're going to have contentions in your life with people from time to time anyway. And the Bible said, it's impossible, but that offenses will come.
Sure.
So if that happens in your life, if you are the, either the receiver or the recipient of it, and then you see some social media post where, someone that that you've had some element of a beef with, and it may not be great, but there's been some kind of a disagreement. They post something that could not be, it may not be anything about you at all, but if they're not specific about what they're saying and they're speaking general terms, you can assume it to yourself quickly.
Here's the thing about it. I mean, what the world does with social media is irrelevant, okay? But what God's people do with social media is relevant. And what I mean by that is they should see us being biblical in what we do. If I have a grievance with Brother Matt, I should just go to Brother Matt.
Right.
That's biblically the right thing to do.
Right.
Not take a shot at him online or whatever the case may be. And the bad thing about it, you see it not just in church, but you see in people's families all the time. People going online making smart remarks about their family, whatever the case may be, just building walls that will it'll be hard to tear them down and rebuild, or in some cases they'll never be torn down, and it creates a permanent wedge. And here's what I'd say. I mean, be careful what you say in your youth, 20s, 30s, whatever, even your 40s, because you're going to live with the consequences of that for the rest of your life.
Right.
And honestly, I know, our kids are getting a little bit older or whatever the case may be, but we have been slow to almost no on the social media thing.
So let's talk about the church, okay? Matt, for a second here as we wind her down. So your church is going to leave a digital footprint through social media for the purpose of reaching whomever, but primarily your community. Give some ways that a church can interact with social media to be effectual in their community. How can that happen?
Well, first of all, like it's already been said concerning your testimony, I think the first area the church should, if they're going to have a platform on social media, is to make sure they're keeping their testimony in check like it's supposed to be. And second, we don't have a church website. But when I first took the church where I'm at, I went on Google and looked up our church, and I redeemed, so to speak, the name of our church on Google and took property of that.
Mm-hmm. And domain. You bought a domain.
I didn't buy it. Just you can go on Google and you can type in your church or whatever, and you can claim the domain. And I claimed it. And so I can control what folks see for Gordon Heights Independent Baptist Church. And that's the first thing I done. We were listed as Gordon Heights Baptist Church, and we didn't have any traffic hardly. But when I changed it to Gordon Heights Independent Baptist Church, our traffics went through the roof. Mm-hmm. Every quarter, Google sends me an email on how many people had visited that Google search, how many people has clicked our call. And,
really?
Yes, sir. And so every quarter, I get hundreds of people that have searched for independent Baptist churches in our area, and we have seen the fruit of that from coming in. I've talked to several pastors on the phone. We got 2 couples now. One couple just went back home, and they were from Oklahoma. One's from Iowa, and that's how their pastor helped them find a church. They were looking for independent Baptist churches in the area, and so I get phone calls, and they've been with us now a few months. And they thoroughly enjoyed the service. We've made a connection between their pastor, us, and matter of fact, we had a lady in Georgia. Her brother was having surgery in hospital here in Concord. So our pastor said, look online and see if you can find an independent Baptist church that's got a prophet's chamber that lets you stay instead of you buying a hotel room. So she contacted our church, and I got back with her. Our church put her up in a hotel room for 2 days. She came down, stayed
Praise
with
the
her brother,
Lord.
visited us at church. Until this day, she still reaches out to us through our church.
Sure, praise the Lord.
And so we get that traffic. And like we record every service. We try to every service. We're doing it on our phone now. We had just met with the folks at the church, and we're going to fix and drop some money into some professional equipment because my mom can't go to church, and she watches every service. We have people in our church whose family are they're bedridden and can't come. Mm-hmm. They watch our services, and when we're not there and we're not recording the service, I told my wife, I'm surprised at the folks that message our church page. Amen. Why y'all didn't go live? What's happening? Is everything all right? Are y'all going live tonight? Mm-hmm. And so the church can be a blessing. And the other Sunday morning, usually I'm so used to preaching that I forget about the camera and I never say anything about those who watching. But I said something to those who watch because one Sunday morning I preached on blessed by the best. Luke 24, Jesus ascended, the Bible said, let his hand bless them. We had over 2,100 views for that one service.
Amen.
And that's the highest we've ever had on the service. And but I jokingly said we got 21 views if all of y'all would send $1 a piece in.
Yeah.
But you could reach. Matter of fact, we even boost posts sometimes, spend money to reach 5 mile radius.
Is that effective?
It is. We fed the community during the middle of the pandemic. 165 spaghetti plates just off of boosting that post in a 5 mile radius to get that out there for people. You can set the age group, whatever age group you want to get, from 18 to whatever.
You're talking about on your boost when you're boosting.
Yes, sir. You set the miles and the age limit. They say from 18 to 29 years old, 88% of those stats and statistics we made are the group of people that's on Facebook. So we set ours from 18 to 65, which goes from 88% to 78% to 64% of folks that are in our area that are on social media.
The advertising demographics are amazing. We done the same thing when COVID hit, shut our bus ministry down. We created a mail out program in which we did an animated video, and we only sent it to families in a radius of like 10 miles of our church that had kids in that bus ministry age classification. And what we done is we started a weekly mail out where we would send them a little bit of candy and a chick track. And as new people come and signed up, it gave us prospects whenever the COVID restrictions were lifted. We ended up with 16 different families to go visit and start getting involved in the bus ministry as soon as the COVID restrictions were lifted.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But how do you, let me back you up a little bit. How do you do an animated video?
I hired someone to do that.
Costly?
$30.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, what was the length of the video?
Facebook wants you to limit it to, a couple, like I think maybe a minute to a minute and a half is, I think you can go up to maybe 2.
On a boost. On a boost.
No, on the video length. The length is what they want to be, because of upload, download. I don't know all the technical part of that right there.
Our program's a lot longer than that.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about maybe it is a boost. I don't know. I can't remember all the demographics on that part of it. But maybe it is when you upload something that's for what they consider a business or advertising. We're just posting to a page. I could post a video, like my sermons are posted to the church page. It can be an hour, don't matter how long they are. But when you're boosting something like that, I think there's a little bit of a different spin. I ain't sure completely, but
so my question to you is going to be the same as I asked Brother Matt. So I'm a young pastor. I've got a good church, but we're trying to do some good work for the Lord. Mm-hmm. What are various ways that a pastor can take a social media page, regardless of platform, and minister through it. Not just to grow his church numerically, but to be a spiritual help, not just preaching, but what can he do?
I'd say this. I mean, you do it for the podcast, and you invite other guys to help you. But the recipe is perfect. You do the little morning minute meditations. Even if you didn't do one for every day, if you've done a couple a week, your people are getting to see that. People are really liking the ability to get a word or thought in a couple minute time frame, whether it be on their lunch break, on the go, on the way to work, whatever. It's kind of an aiding and assisting to their devotions. People love that kind of stuff. So there's that, But with I'm going to just step slightly away, but you can take like Zoom now, and you can do Bible studies. And people are doing full-fledged, especially during COVID, they're using Zoom to do Sunday school classes and Bible studies and, all kinds of stuff. Brother Kirkman, I think he is out there in Utah. I think they were doing some of their college ministry that way for a while. I know at least they were doing some Sunday school classes, or maybe his wife's doing some ladies' meetings. There's just so many different things. Technology is a tool if you'll use it as a tool. It ain't got to be a pitfall, Now, I want to say this to everybody that listens, including myself. I'm not going to preach to the choir here. The bottom line is this. It's my job to control it. Nobody's going to oversee that for me as an adult. I've got to keep it in check. I can't spend 6-8 hours a day on there and neglect my Bible and neglect my prayer life and all that other stuff. So, you might need an accountability partner. You can set your phone up to tell you whenever enough's enough. Technology even has built-in ways to monitor itself. And, but yeah, for a young pastor, you got to talk to people who are doing it. I'll say this, scale of 1 to 10, I feel like I'm doing it on a 1. There are people out there that are doing it so much better. And that's one of the areas of ministry right now that I'm reading everything I can get my hands on. I'm listening. I'm looking for seminars.
Well, where can people look for stuff like that?
You look for stuff like that.
Best way
you find people that are doing it well. In other words, there may be ministries, and a lot of times it's churches that already got a big staff. And they may have someone, there are staffed people now that are just media ministry. That's all they do. From the orchestration of the service itself to getting it online to, whatever. You find those places and you start making calls and contacts, and you just work your way like you would through anything else. If you want it bad enough, you go chase it down, and then you say, okay, well, that's not me. I can't do that. But what can you do? You can do something.
Right.
My Facebook page costed me nothing. Then the church page costed me nothing, but time and energy to put out material. That's all it's all about, So you kind of got to factor it in. It's no different than I'm going to make my nursing home visits. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Every week I'm going to sit down for the morning minute meditations. You set aside time to do those. And anything that you're going to do ministry-wise or anything else you got to put time into it. And so that's what it's. And then on the stuff you don't understand, you got to do the legwork. Got to research it. Right. And so that's where I'm at.
For me, it's an hour and a half every morning.
Yeah.
I mean, to answer everything that comes in, to check on what folks have liked, and to repost material and edit videos is an hour and a half a morning.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include all the other stuff, that I have to do, not just with the podcast, but with the various, irons in the fire that I have.
At the end of the week, you've spent a normal work day for someone who works 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yes.
You have put in that kind of time per week.
Yes. That's 7 days a week, on vacation.
Yes.
Whenever.
It's been very effective for you. It's been very effective for Galilee. It's been very effective for the higher grounds.
Well, I mean, truthfully, as a result of it, I have had the opportunity of preaching meetings for people that I didn't know.
Sure.
Because they saw the material we were putting out, and other things too. I mean, we'll be visiting with some families on tomorrow. My wife will, and these families we met as a result of them being turned on to the material that we put out.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of positivity.
That's great.
Chance to influence people.
Yes. But again, there has to be a balance with it.
Absolutely.
And if there's not a balance with it, you can have something that is, and A.W. Tozier said it well, and he died in 1963. He said, media is here to stay. And he said a lot of times, with the great and grander plan of giving the gospel out, and that's the way we approach media, we don't realize how sucked in we're getting, and the next thing you know, it's a detriment. And Tozier died in 63. If he saw that in 63,
oh wow,
I can't imagine what Tozier would say today, about media and where we're at. But I do know this. I do know that bridging that gap and holding that balance is possible.
Yes.
And we might as well use it for the glory of God.
Absolutely.
Amen. I wish it wasn't here. Truthfully, I long for simpler days when you sit on the porch with a pocket knife in your hand and you whittle on sticks and chew tobacco. I mean, that's what no, I'm just kidding.
No. I think better so the heart of the mouth speaks. You meant that.
I'm just kidding. Matt just spit his coffee cup. No, but I do wish for simpler days.
Sure.
But I'm never going to have them again.
No, never.
And so we might as well use it for the glory of God.
Yep.
Hey, thank you for joining us today for the Higher Grounds podcast. We appreciate you joining us. Let us know that you're listening and communicate with us. We'd be glad to talk to you and communicate with you. As always, from the Higher Grounds podcast, you friend, keep pressing on the upward way. We will see you next week.